Welcome to the Open Books Podcast, where we discuss all things going on in the real estate industry, helping you take the road less traveled to real estate success, guiding you to the top 10%. As you guys should know by now, I'm your co-host, Curtis Haddock, alongside my other co-hosts, Casey Tudor and Brooke Massey. Good morning.
I love you guys.
We love you too.
I wish the feeling was mutual. It is.
I'm leaving.
You had to.
It was just wide open, you know. And you're in your cancer field today. I shouldn't have done that kind of joke. I'm sorry.
I'm not in my cancer field.
Brooke, I love you, Brooke.
Well, it depends.
Well,
what
hold on.
kind
Let's
of cancer field.
wait. I
Brooke,
think we need
Brooke,
to
I could not
clarify
live-
what that means.
I am.
You do not have cancer. You are a cancer,
Yes.
and not in a negative way, in an astrology
Zodiac
way.
Astrology sign.
Oh yeah, that's a good clarification. Now that you've been a part of my life, I couldn't continue on without you being in my life, Brooke. Okay.
I appreciate it.
So
Are you in
there-
your cancer fields today too?
Well, I wanted to make up my nasty joke.
Are you
know?
guys saying? Are you guys saying I should not go home today because my wife is a cancer as well?
Oh.
Is she really? When's her birthday?
June 26th.
Oh yeah.
What?
So is my mother's. June 26th.
How did
That's
we not
2
know
days
that?
before Curtis and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew
Curtis and I
that.
have the same
Yeah,
birthday.
no, it's June 28th.
No
Audience.
wonder Claire's so awesome. And I'm always on her side when you guys are fighting. No
And just so
wonder.
you know, emotional because
Yeah.
I feel like I've had to defend myself because of this.
Okay.
Is cancers just feel all the emotions intensely.
Yeah.
So that's what they mean by
we
emotional.
care about people.
God, I feel like I do
We
too.
empathize with
So like
people.
I'll tell you, like I can be super angry and happy all at the same time, and it's not a fun feeling. But because you're a cancer, you feel both of them at the same time. But today, I just feel passionate and motivated
Okay.
to kick some ass.
Beep.
I was like, I don't know if that's a beep.
You didn't line the beep. You didn't line the beep up right.
No, that's why I did it. I did it on purpose.
I don't care. You can cuss all you want on this.
Guys, we want like their kids are around in the car. There's people in the car right now with their kids. They just picked them up from school, and they're listening to their
What child of
podcasts.
yours? What child of yours lets you listen to a real estate podcast while you're driving?
Ones that have a screen in the car.
Ones that have a future.
yeah. Ones that care about their success.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, because we're in real estate, so I'm sure people have heard cussing, and they've
Yeah.
been on the phone with clients and whatever else with their kids in the car.
I do it with
So
Curtis
which is
all the time.
fine.
I'll be on the
Makes
phone,
me
I'll
tough.
cuss, and he'll be like, "Hey, Jonah's in the car. You're on speaker." I'm like, "Oh,"
Yeah. I mean,
And then
you
the-
jerk.
and then I don't cuss again.
I think
Yeah.
Curtis just knows not to call me when Jonah's in the car.
Or at least not to put you on speaker. Or it's not just put you on speakerphone when he's in the car.
I can't help it. Hey, you
Yeah.
know, people that cuss are actually more honest people.
Well, I will say too, like,
I don't agree.
yeah, I don't know if I would
Like,
agree
you're
with that.
a dishonest person.
With that, I don't know if I would agree with that
Just kidding.
statement. How I would say though that
It was a meme. I don't know.
I would say. I mean, I get why somebody would say that and to justify their cussing too, especially. But Jonah knows all the cuss words at this point, but
Are you saying I'm not humble?
no. I don't know. I didn't even use the word humble at all. You know.
I know. I'm in my cancer fields, remember?
Oh yeah. Well, you're reading too much into things.
Yeah, making shit up.
Yeah.
Oh, I just cussed.
No, Jonah knows all the cuss words, but he won't say them because he knows if he gets caught saying cuss words, then he loses his privilege of watching some of the PG-13 movies that I've allowed him to watch.
Oh, yes.
And so he won't get to watch any of them or any possible new ones that that we decided are okay for him. Usually they're ones that are made by like Disney or something like that.
I feel like how you just said that story, you're really kind of protecting yourself as well. Like you have like a secret, like
What do you mean?
like a secret with Jonah, like, hey, like, don't ruin this for me too, bud.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of like what it is. I'm like, man, you're gonna get me in big trouble if you go on cussing, because then your mom's gonna say, I told you it's because of those movies that you let them watch.
So I really think you're just negotiating with
I
your
was
wife.
I was gonna do the segue.
Yeah,
Yes.
darn.
We didn't even plan this.
I'm glad.
either.
I'm
We
glad.
just start rambling.
I'm glad I set you guys up for a nice little segue
I'll
into
let Casey
today's
have it.
topic.
No, you go for it.
No, you go.
You already stole the thunder. You might as well continue on with
I don't know
lightning.
what else to say. I
That
feel
was
like
stupid.
It's not a special day for me or anything.
I told you not to mention that.
Well, I didn't say why it was. It
Well,
could
you
be-
got a really good phone call right before we got on this podcast.
I did.
So, I mean, that's a good day.
it's a good day.
Well, if you guys want to know what day it is, you're going to have to message us to find out because we ain't saying.
Comment below and I'll let you know
Comment below.
if I check the YouTube video.
Okay, so yeah, I am negotiating with my wife for sure
Yeah.
because we have different views and opinions on what is appropriate and not appropriate at Jonah's age.
Yeah.
I know that the majority are going to side with my wife on this because it's rated PG-13 for a reason.
Yes.
And there are some things where his mind is not developed enough to fully understand what's going on. So I have to protect him from that. So I do like fast forward stuff, and I don't want to get ridiculed by our audience either. Like, I can't believe you let him do that. But anyways,
Listen,
I can totally
it's
believe it.
life. I mean, he's either going to see it later or now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like...
yeah,
at
no,
least
for
it's
sure.
with you now.
But like it has really like,
But it makes sense, like the developing and stuff
Oh,
like that.
100%.
I totally get
With
that.
some of the stuff, yeah. But when it comes to like bad words and stuff, like I feel like exposure to things. There's a line for sure on what you expose people to, but exposure to things, I think, is a good thing
Yeah.
because when you try to hide and shield them from so many things, then when they finally get out in the real world on their own, it's going to be like a shock to them.
Yes.
And they go crazy. Whereas now I have this trust and this bond with my son where he knows that I'm trusting him to be mature to handle like knowing some of these bad words and knowing that you're not supposed to use them.
Yes.
And so he now he's actually like the justice police at school, and if he hears any kind of bad word, I mean any kind of word that could be considered
he
a bad
tell?
word.
I love
he
that.
doesn't tell, but he will point at them and say, "Hey, that's not a good word. You shouldn't be using it."
I totally
You know?
see Jonah doing
I
it.
can see
yeah,
him too.
yeah. That's he's justice. Like, it's a good thing, but there are some things where it's like, hey, buddy, calm down. It's not
fine.
that. Yeah, it's fine.
Well,
yeah.
I love it because it's kind of like a healthy balance, I think,
Mm-hmm.
between everything, where April's happy, you're happy, Jonah's happy, and everyone's just having a good time and bonding, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a compromise from everyone, and I think, and I don't want people to think that's just a compromise because it really is essentially a negotiation and kind of
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
how you think about.
I'm just gonna leave.
Okay, bye. This
Brooks
is
Pastor
the
today.
Curtis and Brooks show. We'll just change our name again. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I am kind of tired. I might just doze off here.
that's okay.
No,
We don't
but-
need your comments today.
But when you're talking to like clients and stuff like that, you kind of have to have that same mentality. And there's some little
Yeah.
tips and tricks that we can kind of go through.
You got to create any negotiation. It will never. Shouldn't say never because absolutes are rare, but. It's you got to create win-win scenarios for the negotiation to go well, for people to at least agree to the negotiation. Usually people get upset after negotiation if they find out that they could have gotten it for less or more or whatever side. Like if they find out that the other person was negotiating in bad faith and trying to maybe screw you out of something. But as long as you are happy with the outcome, then that's really what matters. When I was in college, our professor did this really cool experiment where everybody got a piece of paper, okay, and it was a negotiation on buying a car. All right, so you paired up into groups of two, right,
Okay.
and everybody had the same scenario, buying the same car, and one person was the dealer and the other person was the purchaser. Okay. Now everybody's card said something different. So like each group didn't have the same card. And what it said you're the dealer. You bought this car for X amount. Your manager is willing to go as low as this. Okay. And this is the starting point. This is as low as you can go. Here's what you guys paid for the car. Get as much as you can for the car.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the equation, the buyer got their card and said, here is the value of the car. Here's as high as you are willing to go. You're not going to go. You can't go past this. Okay. And here's the starting point or whatever. And so then you guys negotiate and figure out like a price where you settle. And then at the end, you get to see the other side. Like, oh man, I could have got them to come down another $2,000 if I would have just pushed more,
Yeah.
And so you can see like who came out ahead in the negotiation, even though you got a deal done because the buyer, like if the buyer was like, man, I was willing to go to 10, but I got it for 9. But then they find out that the dealer might have been willing to go down to like 7,500. Right?
Okay.
And so they left $1,500 on the table.
Did they have like
But
multiple
did they?
groups, and did
Multiple
everybody
groups.
kind of have like different
Everyone had
results?
different results. Yeah.
But there's
That's
that.
what I wanted to pick out too.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go?
You're deferring, and she's going to take your
was
mojo here.
So,
your comments.
Go for it.
So, well, what you have to be careful with is, thinking about that money on the table is not getting too hyper focused on it, because sometimes if you want something, you need to just go get it.
I agree. Yeah.
It's not all about the money or the deal. Now, some people, it's totally about the deal, and they'll buy whatever because they got a deal.
And they'll kill a deal over $1.
Or they'll kill it. You're right. So like, with the car I just bought, like I didn't really negotiate with him because I can afford it. It seemed to be price fair compared to everything else I looked at, and I didn't want to lose the car. So I just said, get me out of here in an hour, and I have no problem paying you full price because I'd hate sitting here.
Yeah.
And they did. They got me out quick. And so
That's a negotiation, though.
it's a negotiation.
Yeah.
So I always try to tell people to kind of forget about the word compromise, because compromise, usually both people lose something.
And there's no such thing as fair in real estate.
That's the F word in real estate, as we always say. So I read a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Bosch, and he is a Voss, VOSS. Chris Bosch is a basketball player.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Sorry, I like my NBA.
I was just going to go with it. Cool.
Chris Bosch, man, he wrote a negotiation book on
Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, so he was a
out.
hostage negotiator. So if you're going to listen to someone about negotiations, you might listen to the guy who is trying to protect people's lives.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Who are not in a good mental state, and they will literally probably do anything. And he's been the best success story for the FBI in that regard. And so the story that's told, one of them is that a guy comes downstairs, he meets his wife downstairs, and he says, honey, which shoe should I wear, the brown one or the black one? And she's like, well, I like the black one. And he says, well, I really like the brown one's better. And they go, you know what, let's compromise and just wear one of each. And so then when they go to this party, he's wearing mismatched shoes, and they both look like idiots because obviously she's allowing this to happen and he's okay with it. So it's like, who does that?
Yeah.
And so the story is like, so how I've been successful in real estate, and especially in multiple offer situations. I just won one the other day. And the reason being is because I told a story. And the story was, they live across the street. They're going to put 20% down. I've sold them a house. I sold them that house. They were not picky on repairs. They both have good jobs. They love the neighborhood, the street, but they're going to start a family, and they need to have a little bit of a bigger house.
Yeah.
And that did it.
Well, I mean, just
Are you sure that since they lived across the street, they just didn't know them and were like, oh, I like that family?
So they do. So, well, they don't know them. They would wave at them. And so I know,
I'm sure
I knew
that
that
helps.
much.
Yeah.
And so they're like, they're like, that'd be great. They would love the neighbors to move into their home and start a family from a few houses down.
I also know too that not many agents do what you just said you did.
No, they don't.
No, they just send the offer and just say sent offer.
On the other
that's
side,
You got to be careful about what you say to people, like even saying like starting
Yes.
a family and stuff, because then you
Absolutely.
got like protect.
Wasn't in
But if
writing.
you just call
things.
me and just have a conversation with
Yeah.
me, I can tell you now. I know that you've worked with the client before,
Yeah.
so I know, like, okay, you're comfortable, they're comfortable with you, you're a good agent, they're good clients. Like, that's things that I can take.
I'm not already telling the listing agent what the seller needs to fix. Like I
Right.
get that all the time.
All the
I got
time.
a terrible one.
Well, and you probably
yesterday.
get it too. If that did happen on this deal, the other agents that did it, they probably did it via text, because it's getting the more technology that we get, the less and less human interaction that we want to have. So we don't get on the phone, and we're not actually having a conversation where you can hear tone, where you can hear emotion and have a conversation and work through the situation and the problems. Whereas if you're just sending a text and they lose out on the deal, they're not going to understand or realize, man, they don't know why they lost the deal. So they're going to go on to the next multiple offer situation, do the same thing. And then I hear all the time, buyers are like, man, we've missed out on like 4 or 5 houses. The market's crazy. And I'm like, well, it could be the agent that you're using, because if you're missing out on 4 or 5 opportunities, you've put in 4 or 5 offers and you haven't gotten one of them, then there's a good chance that your agent is not helping guide you the right way.
Yes.
Because once you miss out on the first one, then you should have a much better idea of how to approach the second one.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean you'll get the second one, but at least you know what it's going to take if you really want the house.
Unless you're in a 2020 market and your buyer has no money.
Right. And if that's the case, then there's nothing you can do.
Then it's just practice at that point. That's what I had. One client and probably wrote so many offers, and they did have a little bit of cash, just not enough. There was something I was going to say.
I bet there was.
Oh, there's always something, right? We're just a bunch of real estate agents, and we're fighting over the microphones to talk and teach all these people all these valuable things.
It was funny because you kept taking Casey's like what he was gonna say, and like you were saying exactly the point he was gonna make, and now this time he got to talk first, and not that you were gonna say the same thing, but you didn't. You kind of forgot what you were gonna say, so now that's why he's like, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Casey kind of brought it up about, like, don't just look at the numbers. Like, negotiation is not just numbers or contractual.
It's not
Transactional.
just kidding.
No, like, I was talking about a contract, not a
Contractual?
Yeah. But it's not always details. Sometimes it's emotional. Like,
It's always emotional.
and that I will always, probably 99.9% of the time it is, unless you get those people like you said that are just like they'll break the deal over $1.
But you know what?
There's not that many.
But you know what? I
people.
find those people are the most emotional ones.
Absolutely.
And they don't look at it that way. They think, oh, I'm a numbers person, and it's like, oh, really? Because you just lost 4 rental properties that we were trying to sell to you at one time over a $5,000 sewer line, and then the seller was the same way.
Yep.
They didn't even want to agree on it, and he spent $2,000 on inspections, doing all these inspections, and she notified all of her renters she's selling, and it's like, you guys, and like there was no story we could tell because they were so egotistical and emotional about it.
Yeah.
But
What? Okay, so how
blinding the
can you
business.
approach a situation like that? Because we have. You're going to have
Especially
clients.
emotions.
Yeah, you're going to have clients all the time who let their emotions get in the way of the deal, or they are so adamant about this one thing being non-negotiable.
And they'll get stuck on
So
it.
what I do
Yeah.
is I get my easel out and I start painting them a picture of them living in a cardboard box. No, I'm kidding. Metaphorically, though, you have to paint them a picture and tell them the options and what could or could not happen.
Right.
And it's always, hey,
Options are
the
important.
next one could be even better. Like we could win if we move on from this. That's fine. We could go and win, or we could just keep kicking the can down the road and spending more and more money, and then wishing you had just done it.
Yeah. And I always say I'm fine with fighting for this one thing for you, right? I want you to know here's what could happen. Here's and what is most likely to happen that you need to think about. And if you're okay with that, then let's go do it, because we could still win, right?
Yeah.
We could still get exactly what you're wanting. But the key, like what Brooke said, I mean, options are so important because sometimes people are so tunnel visioned on how this has to go and what they need. They don't understand.
And they're already
that there's other
stretched,
options.
most
You know
likely.
what I love to do, and you guys may not, but I love to let people ramble. I just let them ramble.
Oh, yeah.
And then because
You learn so much.
you learn
And
so
I let
much.
spouses
When people
sell each other.
ramble, they just start rambling, and then they just say things, and then it's like they're saying the things that they're already subconsciously thinking about.
And then you can mirror them.
And then I can mirror them and bring up those points again. And then at this
solve 'em.
point, I'm playing on emotions at this point. So I actually did it with a client last night. And
Last night?
Yes. And it's a seller, and we had a buyer come. Why are you laughing?
I'm not go for it.
Okay.
I have an idea. I think it's because it's alluding to time.
No, just keep
okay.
going.
I had a seller, and he let us know he does have bipolar condition, and so
He's bipolar?
What's his name? I'm kidding.
I was like, I'm not saying that. But anyways, we had a buyer come, and then they decide to back out last minute, and he was really upset about earnest money because my seller is a really good man, and so he could not get past how they get their earnest money back. And he's like, if I'm
Get it
doing
back?
this, get it back, because they deposit earnest money within inspection time.
Okay.
So they deserve their money back.
Okay.
So
It's written in the contract.
it's written in the
I mean,
contract.
you signed it.
And I was trying to explain it to him, and he was just all in an uproar about why the earnest money doesn't protect him. And so
Protect him.
As the seller.
Exactly. As a seller, yes, which I explain later, but I just listened to him ramble.
Okay, so
So-
do you see what I just did to you, Brooke?
Oh,
I
you're
was
doing
I
mirroring?
was mirroring you.
Yeah.
And
If anything, I'm just like,
And
let
it's-
me get my story out.
I know. I changed.
She's not the client here, Casey.
I changed the direction of the of where you're going
But
with
the point
it.
is that you are learning his pain points and
Yes.
like what
Pain
and what
points?
he
No, I'm kidding.
and,
Oh
what,
my
and,
gosh.
and what he knows and doesn't know about the contract and the
And-
situation.
And then, because he was kind of like, he was so in an emotional state that it literally sounded like he was going to like not sell his house and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
rent it out, And so just listen to him ramble. And so just brought up positivity and said, you know what, this is what we're going to do for you.
Yeah.
On our next offer. So already trying to paint the picture, if you will, and say, on our next offer, we're going to do this for you about the earnest money. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then he was completely fine. And so what he said at the beginning of the conversation, he didn't say at the end of the conversation.
Yep.
Sometimes I have to just tell the client to just get out of the way and say, this is what I do. What I need you to do is pack.
Yeah.
That's it. Do you want to sell this house and maximize what you get for it?
Yeah.
Okay, then you need to let me do my job.
It's not
That's
here,
what
here, and here.
that's what you hired me to do. If you want someone to be your yes person, just do whatever you want, then fine. But I can tell you right now, it's going to cost you money. There's a reason why when people try to negotiate their own property or their own valuable items, that their emotions leave money on the table and or cost them money. It happens. And whether people want to admit it or not, if you're selling your own like valuable property, whether it's a house or anything, your emotions are going to affect your decision making. It's just like why you can't, like in any job, why you can't operate on people that you know and on your family. If you're a doctor, why you can't, like if you're a police officer, you can't investigate people when there's more issues with that. But your emotions affect your decision making, and you got to get out of the way. And there's a reason why I was going to say is that there's a reason why, like if we look at for sale by owners, we talk about this all the time. Just go Google like the average sales price that an agent gets across the country versus a FSBO, and even after commissions are paid, it's like what, $60,000-$70,000 more when an agent is used, and it's because we don't have the emotional tie to the property, and we're able to maximize the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So scenario one is you have a seller, and they've already negotiated, they've already come down on price, and now you are 2 weeks out from closing, and you have a plumbing repair to do, and we send a guy out there to do it. and it's coming down to crunch time, not really any time to see if there's any better deals out there. And the guy's like, yeah, I can do that for $600. And then my seller says, no, there's no way that repair costs $600. I'm not doing it. It's like, well, do you have time to go do it yourself or get someone else out there and keep closing on time? I don't care if we keep closing on time. I don't care if we relist the property. I'm not paying $600 for something that doesn't actually cost that much money. I would rather just relist it. Okay, so you want to pay the bank $800 in interest next month, you know,
Instead.
Well,
that,
and then,
that's
you get a ding
from
and
a
you go back
numbers
on-
guy. That's
Yeah.
an emotional response because he's gonna now lose money
Right.
Yeah, and then you
Out
go
of
back
out
on
of out of
market.
principle or whatever.
out of principle, right?
And-
Which is an emotional response.
correct.
And you go back on market, the risk is higher because then you may even get less at that
And again,
point.
you could do
know?
better.
Because it's
or
been
you
on
could
the
do worse.
market. Yeah, you don't know. And even if you do the exact same, that next buyer, they could be asking for more than $600.
Right.
You
In my
don't
experience, if you've got a buyer on the hook and you've already gotten to this point, obviously there's always going to be a breaking point, right? Because sometimes
Yes.
people just keep coming for you, and at some point you're going to break.
Yes.
But it's like, try to like remove yourself from that and say like, okay, you know, I'm only a week away. It's only going to cost me $1,000 more and I'm done.
Yep.
You know, or I start all over, and you have
and
to
still
find
still have to pay that $1,000 just because of the mortgage payment.
Right.
You know, I have found in my experience probably 9 times out of 10 that the offers and the negotiation for the seller gets worse and worse the longer you are on the market
Yes.
and the more offers that you wait for. Usually, not always, right? But the first offer you get is going to be is going to be the best offer. Now, not if it's some kind of investor that's trying to lowball
Yeah.
you and things like that, but if
Yes.
it's a legitimate, like,
because there's more urgency.
bona fide buyer, right? Then that offer is usually going to be a good indication of what you're looking at. Now, obviously, you can negotiate them up and do different things, but it's so hard to convince sellers that have this mindset of what they're supposed to get out of their property until it's too late. Sometimes, you know. Let's talk about creating win-win scenarios. Like, what are some things that you guys do to try to create win-win scenarios for your clients?
Well, for what happened to me when I sold my house, a win-win for my buyer was because I had a higher offer come in, and so I bought this little house in the village for $100,000 like 10 years ago. Put about 30 into it, listed it for 200, and I got an offer for 200 from an investor, and then I got an offer for 215 FHA loan. And that realtor was a little aggressive with me, and I didn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so that was like strike one for her. And obviously I want to sell my house, so I was going to work with them. So then I called the investor and I said, you know, what's your intentions on with my house? And he said, well, I'm going to, when you move out, I'm going to post it for rent.
Yeah.
And I said, do you know how much you're going to charge? He's like, yeah, probably, you know, like $1,500 or something. And I was like, would you rent it back to me month to month for my mortgage payment now, $1,200? And he said, I'll do that, but then I'm going to have to just offer $195. And I was like, you know what? Deal. I'm good with that because I don't want to move twice while I build a house.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge win-win for both of us.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it worked out that way.
I think when I think about just win-wins in general, I mean, I'm always have my main duty is for my client, right? But at the end of the day, I always make this joke like getting a house under contract, that's the easy part, but getting it from contract to close, like that's the real work sometimes.
Yeah.
And so
We got to be careful too about like saying that we got to do what's like protect like what's for my client, because we're not like fiduciary roles. Like technically, well, depends on what state you're
Right.
in.
Yeah.
If you have a fiduciary role, then yeah, what's best for your client. If you're a transaction broker, which even in states that allow fiduciary roles, a lot of brokerages will do transaction brokerage. Here in Oklahoma, everybody's a transaction broker, and so you know that you're working with somebody on the other side that you have to represent a transaction, because in Oklahoma, they believe if they have agents doing that, it's better for the market and protecting the interest of the market, and not just maximizing income for one party or the other. Now, you still want to protect your clients from getting in trouble or
also that's
getting
my
sued.
business too.
Yeah.
So, and that's who my relationship is, and I got to do a good job for them. So if I want to keep getting referrals and whatever else. But I don't think everybody always has that perspective, though.
They don't, and it's actually a problem. Like the NAR settlement stuff has brought this to light, where people, especially now that we're going to be having to get buyers to sign documents, I think most people who are operating as transaction brokers are breaking all sorts of rules. You know?
Because I'm always because at the end of the day, again, contract to close, that's the important part, and a lot of different things can come up. Or $600, it sounds like a lot to a lot of people, but if you're selling a house and you have a good amount and you're trying to get the deal done, that's really not terrible of a price that you're going to pay.
Yeah, well, it's like that whole. This is another emotional response. I have to make $100,000 on this house, or I can't sell it.
Right?
Why?
Yeah, no, that's
You can't take 98.
Exactly.
I mean, come on.
Yes, that's just an unrealistic.
Because I made I think I was going to make 60 or something like that, so I took 55.
Yeah.
I was totally okay with that.
And by turning it down, you run the risk of not making 98, but now taking it down to 96 or or whatever.
But still, always, I always, if there's another agent involved, I'm always their best friend. Let's work together. We're a team. Let's do this thing together. And the thing, just communicate with them, because if there's a win-win scenario for their buyer, and if they're telling me something that maybe they know emotionally about the buyer and I know something, we don't even have to talk about it specifically, but just saying certain things, I now know we can work together as a team and make it a win for my seller and a win for this buyer, or vice versa.
A big part of negotiations is working with the other agent, because the way that agent is talking to you, whatever they're saying to you and whatever their tone is, that's typically going to be what they go back and communicate to their client.
Or worse.
Yeah. What do you mean by or worse?
Can you believe this guy?
Oh, yeah.
He wants you to blah, blah, blah.
So sometimes you got to be very, very careful what you share with the other side. But at the same time, I'm trying to share things that I want them to go and present to their to their side, and sometimes I'm feeding them information so that they go and it helps the negotiation, right?
Also,
and then there are times where for experienced agents, we all also know that there are things that we want to keep from our client to protect them, because if I learn something about the other side, and as long as it's not a material fact that's going to change the decision making of my client, I'm not going to tell them something that's going to make them emotional and try to pull out of the deal. That
don't
be very careful. Yeah, I mean, because a big part of our job is to be the emotion keepers, in control of our emotions and our clients. And when I come across an agent that can't even control their emotions on the transaction, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, I'm doing one right now.
I listed a house a couple years ago, and it was an old 40s, 50s house, and it had asbestos siding on it, which is actually a really good product. It's obviously still there, and it's in really good shape. It's a really good insulator.
Yeah.
It has a bad rap. The new products don't really stand up to it as far as all that kind of stuff is considered, but it's dangerous if you break it and breathe it.
Right.
But so I have 18 offers on this house, and there's a little porch, and so there's a little ring camera on there. Every agent goes up to this porch and starts having conversations as they're getting in the door. And my client listened to every single one of them. I had him start sending me the videos, because usually I'm like, hey, don't watch that stuff, just because they might piss you off. But in this case, I want to make sure we didn't take the wrong offer. So I really wanted to hear what they were saying. This one lady says to her client, "Oh yeah, that's asbestos siding. They'll be forced to remediate that and take it all down or repair it and fix it all, because otherwise they won't get a loan on it. You won't be able to get a loan on it, and they'll have to do it." And so I was like, okay, well, they're out.
Yeah. See ya.
And then I had Ryan Litz call me on it. The dude is super cool, and he's like, "Hey man,
give him a shout out like that.
here's this. He's awesome. Yeah, I've tried to recruit him for a while.
Come on, Ryan. Where you
Come on,
at,
man. Come on, man.
Come talk to us. If the case is the problem, come talk to me.
Yeah, that's right. And then he'll
just come.
So he calls me and says, "Hey man, this is what's going on. This is an investor, out of state investor. He's trying to buy up as many properties as he can within this much time. He's going to buy it as is. I've been doing this for a long time. I don't really see any big issues with the house personally. I know what he's looking for. I think it's going to work. Cash offer, 20,000 over. How's it sound?" And out of all 18 offers, his was the best. And it wasn't just about the money, it was about him and the way he deals with his clients and me. So that's all negotiations, but it was in a positive, in an encouraging way.
Oh yeah.
I had another guy who was telling his client, because I priced it right, like right what the comps were, in hopes to get 20 or 30,000 over, because that's what I did. Yeah. And he's up there on the porch going, this guy's new. He doesn't know what he's doing. I don't know why they underpriced just to hope to get more. They should just price it right in the beginning. We wouldn't have to mess with all this. You're out.
Yeah, right. You don't understand. You just don't get it.
You think you're so smart. You just gave away your position on a Ring camera.
Yeah.
You dummy.
Yeah. You guys, be very careful about talking in a house. There are cameras
even
everywhere
in the street
now. Yes.
People's exterior cameras can pick you up talking
sound.
in the street.
Yeah, be very, very, very
I will
careful.
call you when I get in the car.
Yeah. A big part of negotiating on the seller side is just pricing. That's a big part of the transaction. And to me, whatever the condition is affects the price. And so if you're pricing it correctly, you're going to price it based on its condition. And so that's one of the most important factors. And what I want agents to hear from this, and a lot of us probably already know this, but for some reason, when we are, again, and this is where our emotions come into play when we're selling our own property, because I do this, I usually hire Casey to sell my properties. And
I'm the realtor's realtor. Call me, Casey Tudor, 405-595-8902.
Joyce just didn't know me yet.
I didn't know Brooke yet.
But I did sell your house.
Sorry, you're too busy.
She did sell one of my houses. Too.
Yeah, gee, thanks for that one.
But even though I have a license and I can put my own properties on the MLS, I understand the value of an agent. And I see all the time people who are licensed and they go and they list their own property FSBO, or they try to do it themselves or whatever. And it screams to me well, then you don't see the value of your own profession in a lot of ways. And so, but when it comes to pricing, okay, for some reason, even though I know what the comps say, right, I get nervous about how the market is going to respond. And so I want to price it a little higher to give myself a cushion, room to come down, room to negotiate. Where it's a typical seller move. But pricing things high, what that does is that it decreases your competition. It decreases the demand. And when your demand is less, you now have people that aren't pitted up against each other. You might have one person now, where if you price it $50,000 below what it's worth, okay, people are going to be lining the door to try to buy this property, because they could just turn around and put it right back on the market and make a quick, 50,000 less some commission, right? So people are the demand goes up like crazy, which then they're bidding against each other, which that's what causes
negotiating against each other. So now you don't have to do it,
right? And it causes the price to go up. But when you overprice things, you now take all that demand, it goes away, and then eventually you're just waiting for that one person that likes the house enough to say, you know what, I'm going to at least attempt to negotiate on this one. Some people won't even attempt to it because they're like, oh, they're asking way too much. Like, there's no chance that I'm going to even especially depending on how much you are overpriced by, but they're not even going to put an offer in because they don't think that you're willing to. You're unreasonable.
Or whatever. Yeah,
won't appraise, or this is not going to work. So what's the point? Yeah, but you'll get somebody who will put it in, and now you just created a situation where that person is only negotiating with themselves. themselves and with you, right? And that doesn't.
I think I'm going to use that today.
That doesn't maximize your opportunity to get the most for your property.
The conversation that you had with that lady yesterday, that FSBO, like I still can't wrap my head around why agents would go sell their own houses for sale by owner. Like I can get it if you want to list it on the MLS, you're offering compensation to the buyer's agent. Like obviously you understand the big picture. You're advertising to all those agents that are going to bring you buyers, so you understand it. But this lady, she's like, I could put it on the MLS if I want to, but I don't want to pay a buyer's agent. It's like, so, in theory, what I'm thinking of, she probably didn't sell a whole lot, but in theory,
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah,
you took 3% commission from your clients.
Yeah.
Right.
And now you don't want to pay it forward. That's why I don't.
I just wouldn't want to sell my house because I do that every day.
Like when I bought my car, like I didn't ask for a discount because, again, I thought that it was a decent price for what I got. I wanted to get out of there quickly. And these people were super cool and super nice. I have no problem supporting people. Like I'm not going to ask my yard guy to do it for 40 instead of 50. It's
Yes.
like, then he just may not blow my porch off.
That FSBO,
Yes.
Because he's like, forget this guy.
what they're doing is, again, they're showing that they don't understand the value of an agent because they weren't a valuable agent. That's the first thing, right? Number two is they don't realize by doing that, it's going to cost them, because we already talked about the longer your house is listed,
start thinking too much.
Yes, the worse it gets. Like the value just goes down the longer it stays on the market. And when you say you're not going to pay a buyer's agent, again, think about that, because if a buyer comes along, okay, they're gonna most of the public, they need an agent to help them navigate the process. They just can't do it on their own, or the deal's gonna bust, or
It's not something you want to mess up.
No, because you're buying a huge asset. One of our new agents, he has a friend that found a house for sale. It's a for sale by owner. All they did was put a sign in the yard. They didn't put it on FSBO.com. They didn't put it on Zillow. They didn't do anything.
What's the phone number?
It's not on MLS or anything. Hold on, I'm gonna get to my point here, because we're gonna try to get it. Don't worry, Brooke. Don't worry.
I was like, that's all I wanted was.
Yeah.
What did I hear you say?
Well-
what did I hear you say? We're gonna try.
We're gonna get it, Casey.
Yeah, that's
we're
what-
gonna
that's
get
what I
it.
thought.
Well, if they want to buy it, then
Good
we're gonna
deal.
just let them buy and get a commission for it, right? However, it's a huge red flag to me, because the conversation that this FSBO is having with our agent's friend is he's first of all, he's saying he got an appraisal, and that the appraisal came back between this price and this price. It was like 465 and 530. Red flag number one.
Yes.
No appraisal.
It appraised at 450.
Yeah, no appraisal ever comes back with a range. It gives you a value, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is if the appraisal came back between 465 and 530, he's listed at 440. So 25,000 below whatever he said it appraised
it's a
for.
steal.
Right. And then he said, "But I just want to get out of it, so I'm willing to take 400 for it." Okay.
Wow.
So huge red flags. Okay. And all he's doing is trying to convince an unsuspecting buyer that this is a great deal. He might be wanting to get out because his neighbors are crazy. I don't know, right? It could be because there's hidden, termites and whatever, like
Financial hardship, whatever.
There could be something
Getting
crazy.
divorced.
He's trying to hide it and not have it professionals involved in the transaction. So as a buyer, they're gonna want to have an agent navigate the process to avoid them spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and just throw it down the tubes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 90 to 95% of all transactions have a buyer's agent. Right, that's number one. So by this FSBO saying that they don't want a buyer's agent, they don't want to pay a buyer's agent commission, they are turning away 90% of the market.
That would create urgency to get him what he needs.
Correct. Now, a buyer might want it enough to where they don't care. They'll pay the buyer agent commission themselves. That's possible. But what that does is that it limits their buying power on the price, okay, on what they can afford. So now they're going to start negotiating down because of that. Or they're going to go to a house that is paying a buyer agent commission, and this FSBO is not even going to be able to sell their house. Other scenario, a buyer comes and says, "I'm experienced. I don't need a buyer's agent because I can navigate this because they know what they're doing. There are buyers.
I've sold one house
that know
before.
what they're doing.
I know what I'm doing.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm saying there are people that have.
Usually when you sell
that,
about 10, you know what you're
even
doing.
if that have sold tons, that there are buyers that aren't licensed that do know what they're doing, right? So let's say one of them comes along and they want this house. They know that you're for sale by owner. If they're experienced at this, what's the first thing they're going to do?
3 to 6% commission.
They're going to do 6%. They're not going to do 3. They don't care that their side would have only been 3. Mm-hmm. They know the seller is saving 6%, and so that's 6% off the top plus whatever they want to try to get a deal, right? So now this for sale by owner is creating a situation where there's less demand, therefore the price won't go up. They're sending buyers to other houses because they don't want to deal with buyers agents. And then if they do get that, they're looking for a needle in a haystack, and it's going to keep their house on the market for far too long. And all it's going to do is create a stigma that something's wrong with the house.
And these for sale by owners, they'll get you trying to get you to do like unethical stuff too. I was in a multiple offer situation, and it's like, she's like, I've got all these offers. She didn't know what to do with them. And I said, well, I'm happy to look at them. She's like, I'm not going to let you look at my other offers. She goes, I'm going to get with my attorney. And so like a week later, she still hasn't gotten with her attorney, and no one wanted to offer it on it anymore.
Yeah. Or she did get with her attorney, but the attorney's so busy, he's not going to care about
Or gives
the
her bad
sale.
advice or something.
Yeah. But attorneys, man, they're slow sometimes getting back to you. So
they don't have to. They don't have to be urgent.
no, they don't care.
They get paid per the hour.
Right. They're gonna charge you no matter what. One thing that's important is you. Well,
I was gonna say we should definitely visit mirroring, because a lot of, I know we did it, and I did it to you guys both several times without you noticing, which was great. But that proves my point of what you should be doing with your clients, because when they start throwing fits, I'll just back out. And you just say, back out. They're like, yeah, I don't need this, blah, 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 unless they do this. And it's like, okay, well, now I have something to present, right? Instead of just throwing a word around. And so I think that's very important, because a lot of people don't know what to say to their clients, and they don't know how to build a relationship. So when you're building a relationship, you talk about the other person.
get them talking about themselves.
Yeah, use our acronym, the FROG.
It's your time to like take off talking.
Get good at asking questions.
Yeah. So when you're building relationships, family, recreation, occupation, goals. When you're negotiating or your clients are upset, mirror them, and you could do it. You could say something to the husband, and then the partner. This is like he's right, and it's like I didn't even say anything.
Right, and then now they're going to convince the spouse.
Yeah, so you just mirror them and make them explain what they talk about, and they're going to run in circles, and then they'll eventually come around. And I do that with the other agents too.
I'm going to say sometimes when it comes to negotiation, you need to do not rush it. No. Whatever you do, don't rush it. Give it some time.
Yeah,
if your clients if your clients are emotional or whatever, sometimes just letting them sleep on it. I've had clients tell me, like, speak in absolutes. I'll never do that $600 deal.
And then they do.
And then they call me that I just give them time to sleep on it. Yep. And it's really hard for newer agents to do this, because they don't want, now they're wrapped up in these emotions, and they want it to go away, so they want to fix it as quick as possible.
Is like at the forefront, and people think about it.
You just got to let your client sit on it, okay? And I even tell them that, say, listen, why don't you sleep on it tonight? Let's reapproach this conversation tomorrow when we both have had time to think through some options. Let's talk tomorrow.
And your own emotions on it too.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And you can come up with solutions to present to them and options. I've had them the next day, they call me and say, no, we want to get this, or they had time for their spouse to talk sense into them or whatever, right?
Or sometimes they just blab something at you, and then you're busy, and then you don't respond for a couple hours, and then you look at it and they're like, oh, never mind, we get it.
Yep. Same thing when you're negotiating with the other side. A big thing, there's deadlines that we have, right? You can find out a lot about a situation if you wait to the deadline, as close to the deadline as you can. Now, sometimes there are situations where you want to get this deal under contract and get it done, but most of the time, I am waiting as long as I can to see if the other side will give me any kind of tips that sway the leverage to our favor. Meaning, if your buyer really wants a house and you're waiting on a response, you don't know it's multiple offers, or maybe you do know it's multiple offers. So your buyers are antsy. Your buyers are reaching out to you saying, hey, have you heard anything yet? Have you heard anything yet?
Yes.
Now,
my clients are anxiously waiting.
my client.
Nice work.
Have you spoke to your sellers yet? Have they made a decision? My clients really want to know. And I'm like, there we go. Now I know my counter is going to be full asking price or whatever, because I know your clients really want the property. Now, if they don't, a good agent will wait to let the deadline pass. Okay. And then get with the agent if they haven't heard anything, right? Because it shows you're not showing your cards. The deadlines are important, but just remember, if both parties come to an agreement, you can always change the deadline on an addendum.
Right. Well, and if you're a buyer and you really want the house, then give the seller what they want.
Yes.
And then you can go, hey, we really want this. What's
Then
going
you don't have to
on?
worry about it so much. But if you're trying to get a deal, then be quiet.
Right.
Wait.
Yep, you have to.
You have to. If you can't, just like going to the dealership, like you have to be willing to walk away if you want to get the best deal. And but by you not walking away and going forward with all your emotions, you're telling them that you are willing to pay for this house.
And this is hard. And I tell my clients this all the time. Like, I would love to sell a house on the first day every time. I would love to show one house to every buyer and sell it. My life would be so much easier, but there will always be another house.
Yeah.
Like, and I know you really like that one and I get it. Now I know there's like certain situations where it's like next door to their family member or something like that and you can't replace that.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, there's always gonna be a better one. And usually it works out better in the end. There's always gonna be another car. People sell cars every single day,
Yep.
and so I think.
Well, you do. I know that.
Yeah, I do.
Literally every day,
My
Casey comes
neighbor
in with
asked
a
me.
new car.
My neighbor's like, my neighbor's mom was over there. She's like, is that your car? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, are you having a midlife crisis? And Claire's like, he's been having one of those for a while. I was like, well, kind of.
The last thing I think we should talk about when it comes to negotiation was the term we call closing the gap. I think that was one of the most important things that my mentor taught me when it came to negotiating. And a lot of times it's setting the perspective, giving your client the perspective of what we're actually looking at here, because numbers are numbers and numbers don't lie. And essentially, when you list your house, let's just use 300,000 as the starting point. Okay. If you don't have an offer on the table, your gap is 300,000 because you got $0 offers on the table. You are trying to find somebody to put in an offer. Okay. Now, if somebody puts in let's say they put an offer for 200,000. Okay. That's a pretty low offer, especially if the house is worth 300,000. A lot of times the seller's emotions will get so mad about that offer that they're going to immediately blow it off. Yeah. Right. Well, your gap just went from 300 to 100, right? You're now at $100,000 difference. You're trying to close, just like in that example that my college professor did, is all you're doing is closing the gap to find a price that both parties are okay with, that fits within their parameters of what they're willing to go down to and what the buyer is willing to go up to. And the only way that you cannot make a deal happen is if your bottom dollar and the buyer's top dollar don't match. Like they don't cross over, right? If they don't cross over, it will be impossible to get a deal. So when you have somebody do a lowball offer, let's find out if they're serious. Counter them back at full asking price. Like, listen, I'm willing to negotiate here, but until you get to a reasonable price, I'm not going to negotiate against myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Never ever negotiate against
reasonable
yourself.
is kind of like it always depends on a lot of things, but what you have to do is take into consideration of what that market is doing at the time. So if like every house in this neighborhood is paying $10,000 in closing costs, that's a reasonable offer.
Yeah.
Or to get to that number, because that's kind of what's happening.
Sure.
A reasonable offer in multiple offer situations like we were in 2021 is 20 to 30,000 over. That would be reasonable. Anything under that, buy.
Yeah.
You know?
And I do think that there are situations where it's okay for a seller to just turn down an offer.
Sometimes you have to.
You have to, because you want to see like, okay, how serious are you? Do you really want this house? And it shows you that, it shows the buyer that you're serious about your price. Like
Sometimes they'll come back.
Yeah, and if they really want it, they'll come back with a better price. They'll realize, okay, we lowballed them.
Yeah, you want to avoid, I think, trying to get to the point where you have to close the gap, because that's where the story comes in. You're less likely to have to get to that point. And to your point earlier, give it time. If you start trying to close the gap and like, hey, verbally, would he take this? And then 20 minutes later, he's like, no, he'll do this. And then it's like, okay, well, what would you do? Okay, well, we'll do this. And you go back and forth, and it's like 10 counters within 2-3 hours. You're done.
Yeah.
You're most likely not going to end up, because people start getting pissed after 2 or 3 counters.
Yeah.
Well, the
yes.
point though is that when it comes to closing the gap, it's helping your client recognize what the reality is.
Yes.
Like all we're doing here is now we're at 100. Now we're asking for $100,000, not $300,000. So if it's a low ball, then I'm either going to turn it down or I'm going to counter full price until we get to a situation where the buyer shows that they're serious. If the buyer shows that they're serious, to Casey's point, it's like, okay, if the seller is willing to negotiate, let's just get it out of the way. Let's go to what we're willing to sell this house for in this moment, right? Because what that does is, and you can hold strong at your position. If the house is worth $300,000 and you priced it right, then I would hold at $300,000, right? Show them that no, this is what the house is worth. If you can show me why you think the house is worth less than that, then fine. But if you're working with a buyer that just wants a deal, well, then that's not what my seller is willing to do. So you don't have to necessarily close the gap and go back and forth to close it. But what you're doing is you're presenting a reality of like, here's how much money we're talking about. You can make it up in other ways. Like say, if it's $20,000, you can say, well, listen, come up to our full asking price. We'll give you $10,000 in closing costs. You just close the gap by $10,000 just from that alone. I think to Casey's point, you want to avoid trying to just settle in the middle,
yes.
right? Which is the never split the difference. If you got to know what it's worth, price it right, and you're going to create a demand that will allow you to demand that price. Mm-hmm. If you're overpriced, then you have no option but to close the gap, or you won't sell the property. Yeah. It could because you don't have the demand, and now you're negotiating with the one person that decided to bring an offer. So if you price it right from the beginning, you should never have to split the difference or close the gap in a major way, but you can come up with creative ways to get the price that you're asking.
Maybe when you are closing that gap, that's when you find a new story to tell.
Sure.
I love it.
Cool.
Negotiations. Listen to people.
Mirror them. Never split the difference.
And tell them this is what it is, or you can't have it.
That's right.
Yep. And if they say no, bust the deal. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And by the way, I charge per hour now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, but just work together and just learn to listen and try to think outside the box. And I mean, you gotta. It's like a giant puzzle.
Yeah.
So
Put your
the puzzle
client in the other
pieces
people's
together.
shoes too. Sometimes really helps.
Yeah, and as an agent, learn to take. I can't say take your emotion out of it. Acknowledge your emotion about it. Like TRRs are bad for me. I hate TRRs.
Yeah.
Those are repair requests, and it's like I have to sit on that for a while. I'll read it all, be like, oh my god, this person's nuts, and then I come back to it. I'm like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought, and then I deliver it to my clients, say the same thing, digest it, come back later, because it's an emotional response at this point, kind of situation. So, okay, well, guys. I hope that you will like our videos. Yep, and that too. Subscribe, hit the bell for future notifications. And did I say subscribe?
You did.
You guys should subscribe. And then
Say it again. Say it one more time.
Subscribe.
Okay. Guys, we have thousands of people listening to this podcast, but only a few subscribers. So we need some subscribers.
Hey, we have a live audience in here today.
We do.
Yeah, making noises. I'm just teasing. I'm teasing, guys.
Hey, man, we're gonna lose our live audience next time.
Sorry. Subscribe. Okay, all right, guys, we're signing off. I'm Casey Tudor. This is Curtis Haddock. This is Brooke Massey, and this is the Open Books Podcast.